Hello and welcome to JK Wisdom Beyond Time, a place where ancient wisdom meets modern life and where timeless questions continue to illuminate the path through our rapidly changing world. I'm truly grateful that you're here. Have you ever noticed how deeply uncomfortable silence can feel? How quickly we reach for our phones when left alone for even a few minutes? How a quiet evening with no messages, no notifications, and no distractions can sometimes feel strangely unsettling. For many people, being alone is not simply an experience. It feels like something to escape, something to fix, something to avoid. And yet, throughout human history, some of the greatest thinkers, philosophers, artists, and spiritual teachers actively sought moments of solitude. They walked alone. They reflected alone. They discovered parts of themselves that could only be found in silence. So why do modern human beings fear being alone so deeply? Why does solitude sometimes feel like loneliness, while at other times it becomes a source of peace, creativity, and profound inner freedom? Perhaps the answer lies not in solitude itself, but in the relationship we have built with our own minds. Tonight, we begin a journey into one of the most universal experiences of human life. A journey through modern psychology, ancient wisdom, and timeless reflections on what it truly means to be alone. And what it means to finally feel at home within ourselves. This is not a conversation about withdrawing from the world, nor is it an invitation to reject relationships or human connection. It is an exploration of something far more subtle. The difference between loneliness and the quiet strength that emerges when we learn to enjoy our own company. Because perhaps one of the greatest freedoms in life is this: to sit in silence and discover that we are not empty. We are simply meeting ourselves for the very first time. A few years ago, a young professional moved to a new city to pursue what many would call a successful life. A better salary, a beautiful apartment, a promising career. Everything seemed perfect on the surface. During the week, life was busy. Meetings filled the calendar. Friends were only a message away. There was always something to do. But then came the weekends. The silence felt different. The apartment suddenly seemed larger. The absence of constant activity became impossible to ignore. And without realizing it, he found himself reaching for his phone every few minutes. Scrolling, watching videos, listening to podcasts, calling people not because he had something important to say, but because the silence itself felt uncomfortable. One evening, he asked himself a question that many people secretly carry within them. Why am I so afraid of being alone? The answer was not simple. Because what he feared was not the empty room around him. It was the possibility of facing the thoughts that emerged when the noise finally disappeared. And perhaps that experience is far more common than we realize. In today's world, solitude has become increasingly rare. There is always another notification, another message, another video waiting to be watched. The modern human mind is surrounded by an endless stream of stimulation. And while connection is one of life's greatest gifts, constant distraction can sometimes prevent us from developing the most important relationship we will ever have: the relationship with ourselves. Many people confuse solitude with loneliness, but they are not the same. Loneliness is the pain of feeling disconnected. Solitude, on the other hand, is the quiet space in which we reconnect with our own inner world. One is experienced as absence. The other can become a source of presence. History offers countless examples of individuals who discovered extraordinary clarity during moments of chosen solitude. Writers retreated into silence to create timeless works of literature. Philosophers walked alone for hours, allowing their thoughts to unfold naturally. Scientists made their greatest discoveries not in crowded rooms, but in moments of deep reflection. Even in ordinary life, some of our most important realizations arrive when there is nothing demanding our attention. A long walk at sunrise. A quiet evening without devices. A moment of stillness after a difficult chapter has ended. It is often in these moments that we begin to hear something we have ignored for far too long. Our own voice. And perhaps that is precisely why solitude can feel both beautiful and frightening at the same time. Because when the world grows quiet, there is nowhere left to run except toward ourselves. And for many people, that journey is the most challenging journey of all. Modern psychology offers an interesting perspective on why human beings struggle with solitude. For most of our evolutionary history, being alone was not a luxury. It was a risk. Thousands of years ago, survival depended upon belonging to a tribe. To be separated from the group often meant danger. Protection disappeared. Resources became uncertain. The chances of survival diminished. And so, the human brain evolved with a powerful instinct to seek connection, to seek belonging, to avoid isolation whenever possible. Even today, that ancient programming still exists within us. The mind interprets rejection as pain. It experiences exclusion as a threat. And it rewards social connection with powerful chemicals such as dopamine and oxytocin. In many ways, our brains are designed to keep us close to one another. And that, in itself, is beautiful. Human beings are not meant to live without love, friendship, or community. We flourish through meaningful relationships. We heal through connection. We grow through shared experiences. But modern life has introduced something entirely new. For the first time in human history, we can remain constantly connected without ever learning how to be comfortably alone. A moment of boredom immediately becomes an opportunity to scroll. A quiet evening turns into endless entertainment. An uncomfortable thought is quickly replaced by another notification, another conversation, another distraction. The result is that many people have never truly experienced silence. Not because silence no longer exists, but because we have become exceptionally skilled at avoiding it. Psychologists often speak about something called the fear of missing out. The anxiety that life is happening somewhere else, that other people are experiencing more happiness, more success, more meaning than we are. Social media amplifies this feeling. We compare our ordinary moments to someone else's carefully edited highlights. We measure our worth through attention, through validation, through the approval of people we may never even meet. And slowly, without realizing it, our sense of self becomes dependent upon constant external feedback. But a profound question emerges from this pattern. If our peace depends entirely on the presence of others, what happens when life inevitably asks us to stand on our own? What happens after a heartbreak? After children leave home? After retirement? After moving to a new city where no familiar faces remain? These moments are not failures. They are invitations. Invitations to discover whether we have built an inner world that can support us when external circumstances begin to change. Modern psychologists describe this as self-differentiation, the ability to remain connected to others without losing connection to oneself, to love deeply without becoming emotionally dependent, to enjoy companionship without fearing solitude, to find meaning both in community and in quiet reflection. Perhaps true emotional maturity is not choosing between independence and connection. Perhaps it is learning to embrace both, to recognize that healthy relationships enrich our lives, but they do not define our entire existence. And maybe the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the ability to sit alone in a quiet room and discover that our own presence is enough. Because when we stop seeing solitude as a punishment, it slowly begins to reveal itself as a teacher. Long before modern psychology began exploring the relationship between solitude and emotional well-being, ancient civilizations had already recognized a profound truth. A person who cannot be at peace with themselves will often struggle to find lasting peace anywhere else. In the ancient traditions of India, periods of solitude were never viewed as acts of isolation. They were seen as opportunities for self-discovery, moments to step away from the noise of the world and listen more carefully to the quiet wisdom within. Some of history's greatest conversations did not happen in crowded cities or magnificent palaces. They emerged in forests, along rivers, on mountain paths, in places where silence itself became a teacher. One of the most remarkable examples comes from an ancient dialogue between a warrior and his guide. The warrior was surrounded by uncertainty. The future felt overwhelming. The people he trusted seemed distant. And beneath all the external conflict, a deeper struggle was unfolding. A struggle to understand himself. His guide did not encourage him to run away from life. Nor did he ask him to abandon human relationships. Instead, he offered a different perspective. That true strength begins when a person learns to become steady within themselves. Because a mind that constantly depends upon external conditions for peace will always remain vulnerable to change. But a mind that has learned to cultivate inner companionship carries a different kind of freedom. It can love without fear. It can serve without losing itself. It can walk through uncertainty without being completely consumed by it. The ancient teachers understood something that modern life often forgets. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It is an invitation to connect more deeply with the person we spend every moment of our lives with, ourselves. And perhaps this is why so many seekers throughout history deliberately embraced periods of silence. Not because they hated the world, but because they wished to understand their place within it. They understood that wisdom rarely shouts. It whispers. And those whispers can only be heard when the noise begins to settle. Today, many of us live in environments filled with constant stimulation. Our attention is continuously being pulled outward. Yet, the fundamental human questions remain unchanged. Who am I when no one is watching? What remains when titles, achievements, and social expectations are set aside? Can I enjoy my own company without immediately seeking distraction? These are not ancient questions. They are timeless questions. And perhaps every generation must answer them for itself. The goal was never to reject human connection. The goal was to discover an inner foundation strong enough that relationships become expressions of love, rather than desperate attempts to escape loneliness. Because when we finally learn to stand comfortably within our own presence, we begin to meet others not out of need, but out of genuine appreciation. And that changes everything. Centuries after these ancient reflections emerged, another tradition began, asking a question that remains deeply relevant in our modern world. Why do human beings find silence so difficult? Not the silence of empty rooms, but the silence that arises when there is nothing left to distract us from ourselves. Many people assume that loneliness comes from being physically alone. Yet some of the loneliest individuals live surrounded by family, friends, and constant activity. And some of the most peaceful souls in history spent long periods in quiet contemplation. This suggests something profound. Perhaps loneliness is not simply the absence of people. Perhaps it is the absence of a meaningful relationship with our own inner world. Ancient Buddhist thinkers observed that the human mind possesses a remarkable tendency. It constantly seeks something outside itself. Another experience, another achievement, another relationship, another source of comfort. The mind rarely remains satisfied for long. It moves from one desire to the next, hoping that fulfillment lies just beyond the present moment. And in that endless movement, stillness begins to feel uncomfortable. Because stillness asks us to stop searching, to stop consuming, to stop running, and simply observe what is already here. For many people, This can feel deeply unsettling. The moment external noise disappears, old memories begin to surface. Unanswered questions return. Fears that have been hidden beneath years of busyness quietly emerge into awareness. And so, the instinct is often to escape once again, to reach for another distraction, another conversation, another source of stimulation. Yet the wisdom of mindfulness suggests something entirely different. It invites us not to fight these experiences, but to witness them, to observe thoughts without becoming trapped by them, to recognize emotions without allowing them to define our entire identity. Like clouds passing through the sky, thoughts and feelings arise and eventually pass away. The challenge is not their existence. The challenge is our tendency to believe that we must immediately react to them. Solitude creates the space for a different kind of relationship with the mind. A relationship built upon curiosity rather than fear. Compassion rather than judgment. Presence rather than avoidance. And perhaps this is why moments of intentional solitude have been valued across so many cultures and generations. Because when we stop trying to escape ourselves, we finally begin to understand ourselves. The silence that once felt frightening slowly becomes familiar. The emptiness we feared reveals unexpected depth. And the loneliness that once demanded constant distraction transforms into something much gentler. A quiet companionship with our own existence. This does not happen overnight. It requires patience. It requires honesty. And above all, it requires the courage to sit with ourselves long enough to discover that we are far more than the noise inside our minds. Because beneath the endless stream of thoughts, there is a deeper stillness. And within that stillness, many people discover a kind of peace that the outside world alone could never provide. Across different cultures and different moments in history, wise men and women arrived at a similar understanding. The person who learns to be at peace with themselves carries a kind of freedom that the world cannot easily take away. The Roman philosopher Marcus Aurelius lived at the center of power, responsibility, and endless noise. Yet some of his deepest reflections were written in moments of solitude. He understood that a peaceful mind is not something we find in perfect circumstances. It is something we cultivate within. And perhaps that lesson matters even more today. Because modern life constantly encourages us to stay busy, to remain connected, to seek validation, to fill every quiet moment with another distraction. Yet some of the most meaningful experiences in life ask us to do the opposite. To slow down, to walk without headphones, to sit with a cup of tea and simply watch the morning light, to write our thoughts on paper, to spend time in nature without the need to capture every moment for someone else to see. These simple practices are not acts of isolation. They are acts of return. A return to ourselves. The truth is that healthy relationships do not become weaker when we learn to enjoy solitude. They become stronger. Because love that comes from wholeness feels different from love that comes from fear. One says, I need you so that I do not feel alone. The other says, my life is richer because you are here, but I have also learned to be at home within myself. That difference changes everything. It allows us to appreciate people without trying to possess them, to enjoy companionship without becoming dependent upon it, and to accept that while human connection is one of life's greatest gifts, our deepest foundation must ultimately exist within our own hearts. Perhaps the greatest irony of modern life is this. We have never been more connected, and yet so many people have never felt more alone. We carry entire worlds inside our pockets. We can speak to someone across the planet in an instant. And yet, the simple act of sitting quietly with ourselves has become increasingly rare. Maybe solitude was never meant to be feared. Maybe it was meant to be understood. not as the absence of love, but as the place where love becomes free from desperation. Not as isolation, but as the space where we discover that our worth was never dependent upon constant attention or endless activity. The ancient thinkers understood this. The philosophers understood this. Modern psychology continues to rediscover it. And perhaps somewhere deep within, we have always known it too. That the silence we once tried to escape was never empty. It was an invitation. An invitation to slow down, to reflect, to remember who we are beneath the noise and expectations of the modern world. So the next time life offers you a quiet evening, a solitary walk, or a few moments with nothing to do but simply be present, do not rush to fill the silence. Stay with it. Listen carefully. You may discover that the person you have been searching for through countless distractions has been walking beside you all along. Thank you for spending these moments with me. And if reflections like these resonate with you, I invite you to continue this journey with us here at JK Wisdom Beyond Time, where ancient wisdom meets modern life and timeless truths help us navigate the beautiful complexity of being human. Until next time, take care of your mind, take care of your heart, and remember, the ability to be alone without feeling lonely may be one of the greatest forms of freedom we will ever discover.
True wisdom is not found in the loudness of the world, but in the quiet stillness.
Thank you for walking this journey with us. If these reflections brought you peace, continue exploring with us at JK Wisdom, discovering who we truly are.